let's go ahead and jump right in.
Let's do it.
I can't remember what post it was that you put up that prompted me. It kind of jogged or like shook my spirit when I saw the post. Do you remember which one it was that prompted us to have this conversation? Huh?
It was a post. You put a post up saying something to the effect of from some other guy, and the guy said that I'm going to paraphrase it. He said there are industries that depend on Black women staying single. You remember that?
Yeah. So yes.
Yeah, it was like there's a whole, industries are supported by that. So basically saying there's an effort out there to keep promote Black women being single.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, the rabbit holes go so deep with this. Like so many things come to mind with that. And so like it's like when you go back to history and look at, how our families used to be structured to how they are now, it's like, how did we get here? What do you think? How did we get to this place?
Well, man, I'm telling you, this is a sensitive subject now. It's a sensitive subject, but I think it's so important we have this talk. In fact, whoever out there is watching this, I want to encourage you all to go research this, and I want to encourage other people to have these type of talks, because you just a mouthful. And in the spirit of the things I'm about to say first, I want to say that nothing I'm about to say is coming from a self-righteous or accusatory place, or we're better than you, or I know, none of that. I'm saying you put another post out there, Ava, that was important. I think it was from the brother that said, when you pick your partner now, you need to be serious about it. Your apocalypse partner, right?
Right. We laugh, but I'm like,
it's serious. It's serious. I really believe in the years to come, a lot of sisters out there are going to be like, I wish I would have picked my 10th choice, man. Because we're going to really come to realize how much we need each other. So the question you asked about how did we get here, right? Let's look at this. Prior to the 60s, Black people were getting married in the 80s and 90 percentile level. So 80 to 90% of children were being born to a father and a mother. Through slavery, even though it was illegal, we were still getting married. After emancipation and through Reconstruction, we were getting married. When they started lynching us in retaliation to the moves we made, we were still getting married. Okay, and during that time, this is why we had some powerful principles. And I'm not going to be ashamed to say this. We are the proof that God is real, because after 215 years of no pay labor, we acquired 20 million acres of land because we were married. 20 million acres of land. My father is a genealogist, and he taught us when we were young how those newly freed slaves got into Congress, they got into government, local government, they pooled their money together, they changed the laws so that old slave masters who lost their land, they changed the laws so that they could acquire that land. So all the way through after slavery, we were acquiring land, we had our own businesses, and we had this because we had a government called the church, which was expressed through family. And we knew something. We knew we needed each other. That's what we knew. We knew a lot of your grandparents and great-grandparents stayed together over 40 and 50 years. And these people were not perfect, but a lot of them started with very little and then produced professional children. Now this stops in the 50s and 60s. Why did it stop? That's the question. You asked a mouthful, Ava. Why did it stop in the 50s and the 60s? Why did we stop acquiring land? Why did we stop creating and building our own homes?
Now I see why. Yikes. I hate to say why, but Aaron just put in the chat, he said it stopped due to integration. Exactly. That's
and I'm gonna say something to that because I've done a talk on this. Can we be real today?
Let's take it there. Let's go.
This is me. I believe we cursed ourselves with integration.
Ooh.
Slavery didn't stop us. I know how the history books tell it, but we were still moving together. Crow didn't stop us. My grandfathers and my great-grandfathers, they built their own houses when they got married. They struggled from nothing and came up. They had ironsmithing. They farmed their own agriculture. But when we integrated, I believe that we made ourselves vulnerable to some spirits, some people say, or ideologies that cursed us. And those things were, go ahead.
Question, did we integrate by choice? Because Martin Luther King said, he said at the end, he was like, dang, I feel like I've led my people into a burning house.
Absolutely.
So
we were manipulated. I think we were manipulated. There is a man still alive who was Martin Luther King's one of his advisors.
Okay.
His name is Francis Nettles Bay. Okay. He's a lawyer and this dude is in his 80s. He still drives 15 hours across the country. But one of the most interesting things he said was him and other people were advising King not to push for this. They wanted to push for a commercial route to continue what I call edification, self-edification over integration, to develop our schools, to use things like voting and use our own economics to build our infrastructure and things of that nature. But I believe that some of the leaders such as King, they caught on to the mistake. But by that point, the damage was done and became susceptible to the government forced removal of men from houses through welfare, feminism, education, those things. And another thing you saw on a big level, which is the world we live in now, is this. A much greater number of us, instead of having a father working and a woman at home to cultivate those children, you see that a lot of the people in the 60s, that changed where they begin to go more for the material.
Is it, do you think is that they went for the material, or is that when inflation started? Because I remember, well, I wasn't there, but they was talking about gas used to be like 25 cents a gallon and now look at gas. So I'm like, is it the fact that inflation started to eat us out of our profits to the point where we couldn't stay at home? Or is it, I know you've probably seen that documentary, the documentary that talks about how they moved us into, and I know you've talked about this before, how they moved this into materialism through putting like the lady smoking the cigarette in the 1950s. Nobody was doing it before she was on the commercial. It looked cool, then everybody started doing it. Or the different, maybe pantyhose or high heel shoes, and the things that made you psychologically want more, put you in a position to go after more. And so I know, like, if you're maybe 50, 100 years removed out of slavery, that feeling of selflessness, or not selflessness, that feeling of not being enough, and well, I can't get this, so let me try to get this to make myself feel better about the place that I'm in financially. But I haven't been able to piece together, and maybe you can do this, how we went from, and it could have been through wars, or and I know Like,
Yeah.
I didn't know, they don't even teach us in school just how many wars were fought on like US grounds against, at the time they called us Native Americans, now they call us Black. We was called African Americans at one point. Like, we've had so many different names. At the time, when you talk about, you know, your Black Wall Streets, we had Black lawyers, we had all of our own churches, we all had our own supermarkets, we had our own everything.
Yeah.
And then like it was, and I'm just gonna keep it all the way real, which is why I'm very skeptical of some of these people that's out here now.
Yeah.
It was our own government that literally bombed us from the sky. This wasn't, oh, they just came in with torches and lynched people. No. This was our own supposed to be integrated government that literally torched a whole city, just bombed the whole city as if we was in Iraq or something like that. And I think it was you that put up a map of all the different cities where we own things. And so that makes me question whether we really marched for integration or were we forced into integration because we had nothing left because it was taken. Go ahead.
Yeah, you and somebody who's watching in put the comment up as well to tie into what we're saying. No other culture pushes for integration. Look at the Asian culture. Asian culture is very limited in terms of comparison to other cultures in their government participation, but their per capita wealth, family-wise, remains very competitive. They do what every other culture does. Arabic, Islamic culture, if you have Jews or you have Italians, Indians, Africans even, they come over, they consolidate, they push, they develop their businesses, and that's how they include themselves with value in the society. Now, when we pushed or when we allowed ourselves to move towards integration, what we did is we abdicated our power. We abdicated our power from each other. You talk to your great grandfathers and great grandmothers, guess what? Their influences were each other. Their influence was not 100% dominated by the other culture and other culture's opinion. But when you say, instead of me developing my own, I'm going to follow through with integration, and what you do is you abdicate your own self-determination. You also give up your women. You sacrifice your women to that society for your American dream.
How?
You sacrifice.
How do women?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the deals that came when we were moving towards integration was we began to align ourselves a lot more with the Democratic Party. And one of the things that they pushed for or offered was a deal for the welfare system.
Okay.
So instead of us having a value in struggling together, Black men ain't never been the richest people. We know that, right? But talk to the old people. See, my dad raised me around old people, right? And what thing I'll tell you is their community and individually, they would build their own homes to such a degree. My grandmother and grandfather lived in a home for like 3 months. They didn't have a wall up in their bedroom, but they built it themselves and they valued struggling together. When we moved in and started accepting deals like the welfare system and feminism, it began to seed an idea that we don't need each other. Because you marry that, you in some cases, you marry your women to the government rather than the willingness and the understanding of the power of struggling together to build something. So now that government can say, you can get this money for these children, and no disrespect, because all of us need help at times, right? So I'm not knocking welfare. I'm not knocking any people who require that assistance. I believe that people should assist each other. But when it becomes the dominant thing, and when it becomes at the expense of having a male in the home, you create a cascading effect on the children. Because your father is there to be a buffer to mental health issues. Your father is there to be a buffer to crime, to peer pressure, right? Just you know, so those kind of things. When the father's not in the home, I'll read this to you. A child is 5 times more likely to commit suicide.
Wow.
When a father's not in the home, the children are 5 times more likely to be poor. They're 20 times more likely to have behavioral disorders, 32 more times to run away, okay? And 14 times more likely to become sexually aggressive or get into the activity of rape or be raped. So, you know, the onset of early sexuality, these things come when there's not a father there, because we live in a world, in a society where doing it by yourself is difficult. Shout out to all them single mothers who are doing what they have to do. I was raised by a single mother. That's why I have respect for single mothers, but it is a almost impossibly stressing and difficult situation to be in. And, you know, that causes problems for us.
Right. It's, I don't know, like, how they made it so appealing. See, America has the best marketing in the world. They convinced everybody that we are the greatest country in the world. And then I travel to Italy or like some of the other places, and they're more advanced. And I thought we was the best.
It was the best.
I'm shocked. Y'all got all these advancements and stuff. Who knew? Yeah. But we're like, it's the best marketing in the world. And so I had a friend, my friend Sharonda, we have these very like candid conversations. And my husband, after he told me something one day, he blew me out the water. I talked to Sharonda about it afterwards. He was like, you know, I used to date women who thought they were better than me because, you know, I might be blue collar. I don't have a whole bunch of stuff. He was like, my car is not fancy, blah, blah, blah. He was like, but my car is paid for and I don't have college debt. He was like, but this woman, she might have had like a higher class like job than me, supposedly. He was like, but she got $80,000 worth of debt and I don't, I'm free. And I was like, oh.
You saying a mouthful.
Oh, what?
You know what you're saying.
Oh my gosh.
Do you know what you're saying? But let me ask you this, Ava, let me ask you this.
Wait. What?
Here's my question too, going along with what you said. You said, how did we get, see, listen, this topic we could do for 12 hours because there's so many dimensions to go to it. But right. You know, so there's a lot of dimensions we can get to, but I want to ask you a question as a Black woman. What's the 2 most commonly known movies from the 90s that you could quote with any other Black woman?
Probably Waiting to Exhale.
That's one. There's another one. Think. What's the second?
I was about to say, what's love got to do with it? No, that's not it. Give me a hint. You told
Harpo
not to beat me. You told Harpo to beat me.
No.
I can't watch. I never watched it. That movie used to depress me. I would watch it in chunks because I could never like watch it all the way through.
Listen what you just said. You said depressing, but when Black women walk around, they know lines from those 2 movies. But what's the theme of those movies? If you never seen Color Purple,
relationships.
It's bad and it's horrible men. It's horrible men, and then the good men, they portray them as boring. They got W-2s and they got 401ks, but they're portrayed to be unattractive and boring. But on Wait to Exhale, you got Leon, right? Your boy Leon from the 5 Heartbeats, and then on Color Purple is Mr. You now place images in a generation's head that potentially every Black man is a Mr. Every Black man is a Leon. He gonna play around. And so what it says is, if you, we're talking about Black women. Black women now are one group of women whose value socially is based on how dislocated they are from their men, how independent they can be, how how well they can self-provide, and how much they don't need a man. Nobody else rolls like that.
Nobody.
That's a socially engineered spiritual bomb that has been detonated amongst us. That's why we gotta be patient with each other. We gotta be compassionate with each other, because this is not like necessarily our fault, but it's our responsibility to think about these things.
You're right. And one of the Aaron just put in the chat, he used the term struggle. What I've been hearing lately is women have formed something of a movement saying Black women are better than struggle love because no other women have to go through it. What is different between the struggle you were speaking on and what struggle are being dealt with today? Is it a difference in men, women, struggle, time, resources? What's the difference in the struggle that we've been talking?
Okay, so that is that's a deep question. I like that question. I'm gonna try for the sake of time just to kind of deal with it a little bit. A lot of it for me is a perception thing. I think that amongst us, the perception is that we should not have to struggle, which is a fallacy. Everybody, when the Asians come over here and start their shop, I don't want to be stereotypical, but when you see the Koreans do their hair shop, they have to start from the bottom. When the Mexicans bring their people over, they have to work in one of their jobs, consolidate and do that. But there is an attitude amongst us that our men are more sorrier, doggish, irresponsible. Somehow we're worse than other men. And this attitude, there's nobody who are, if you go on social media, there's nobody who openly battles like Black men and Black women. And we go through pain Olympics of who's worse. Ninjas ain't ish, witches ain't ish, basically. Right. And we openly do that like no other culture does that like that. But it's because it's been put in us. We've been programmed that we are liabilities to each other, as opposed to understanding that, yes, we've gone through struggles. Yes, we don't have trust funds and silver spoons. All of us don't have that passed down. But across the planet, it is known that marriage should be respected. That's biblical. Biblical says, let marriage be honored, because it's through that agreement and that commitment to one another that you're able to create a sustainable reality around you.
Right. Have you seen any of the Kevin Samuel videos?
Yeah, I've seen some of those before. That's a funny dude.
I'm about to hit you in the head with the truth. I'll be like, oh, snap, I feel bad for them. But one thing about men that I've noticed, you guys don't have like a filter when it comes to talking to each other. Y'all punch each other in the head with the truth. Women, we don't want to hurt people's feelings. We're going, oh, you look great in that dress, girl. So when I think about it, we've created this culture of lying to each other, so much so that we're living in this place of illusion. And it's an entitlement, and it's a false entitlement, which literally goes
into you gotta be careful what you say.
I'm just calling it, I used to have it. So I'm like, I can't talk about what I don't know about. Like, I used to say what type of man I wanted. He got to be this height. He got to have this amount of money. And eventually, as I started growing up, I was like, I started doing the math and the probability. I was like, first of all, we're how many years outside of Jim Crow?
Yeah.
Second of all, a majority of the men that everybody want the same man. I call him the IBM, the ideal Black man. He got a lot of money. He might be a baller. He might be a lawyer. He might have a whole bunch of money. Yeah. But because he's the ideal Black man, all the women want the ideal Black man. Right. So if there's 8, all 16,000 of y'all can't have the same 8 men
Right.
is
Right.
either he gonna share y'all, and then you're gonna be mad that he can't pick because you feel like you're the better woman, and surely he should be picking you. But one thing that I have noticed, and we haven't even gotten to the church part, like we haven't even gotten there. We're like at the foundation, right?
Right.
But one thing I noticed is that from a probability standpoint, I started noticing, like, because baby, when I tell you, like, if there was a guy that I was interested in, he knew it, because I had no problems at all letting said man know with my eyes, not necessarily being over aggressive, but I had this allure. I know how to communicate with my body language and my eyes to a guy that I'm interested. And then
stop
he
it.
would come over to me and what?
No, I said stop it. Hey, this Aaron, this is my sister. She can't be talking like that, even though it's being recorded. I love you, but stop it. Stop telling them your secrets, girl. Stop it.
Wait, so Aaron, my bad, Aaron, my bad. I know you want to like tear your ears out right now, but just bear with me.
No, it's all good. I love you, sis. Keep doing your thing. I love it. I love everything that's happening right now.
All right. So I knew how to get like a man's attention, and I could always get the man that everybody wanted attention. Like eventually I would either start dating him or we might be in a relationship. But I got tired of having to fight other women. Like they was calling his phone. They didn't care that I existed. I'm like, dang, this is an exhausting way to live right about now. I'm like, I gotta switch how I'm measuring my character. Like it can't just be, oh, he's fine and got money. And so after getting my heart broken from said prototype of guys, who eventually ended up cheating on me, that's a whole nother subject. When it comes to why I believe that the church is having a huge impact on why our Black women are single right now. Because I was like the good girl. Here you go, Aaron. Even though I could allure, I wasn't doing nothing. I wasn't putting nothing out. I was the praise and worship leader. Like, I was scared to hold a hand because, surely we might fall into sin. And so I didn't know how to create connection. And so, I would get so far and then pull away. I get scared. And so one thing that I started noticing, like I said, was that those men are the high value man, quote unquote, that Kevin Samuels talks about a lot. And then there's all these other good men that are overlooked. And so they're like, well, I can't find no good man. No, you can't find the man that's in your head that you created and concocted and formed. Like you got a whole Build-A-Bear workshop in your brain about what you think your husband is going to look like. And so one of the things that stood out to me and why I wanted to do this video is because I've been to many churches. I've lived in different states. And because of that, went to different churches. And one of the things that I kept hearing being preached was don't settle. Don't settle. I heard a man that finds a wife finds a good thing. I heard that. And then not much else outside of it. Don't come to him, ladies. He gonna find you. I always heard pastors saying that. And I'm like, so me being a good girl and trying to be the good thing and trying to do right by the Lord, I would like kind of be standoffish or like, well, he gonna have to come to me. And so this whole thing started, I was literally on the airplane a week or two ago. And it's so funny. I was greeting my husband. We was sorry, Aaron, we was kissing goodbye.
It's acceptable. Jesus like it, so I like it. If Jesus like it,
no, that's right.
So I look to the right and there's this lady. She's hugging she barely hugs this man. She did like this. She gave him like that standoffish Christian hug type deal. And I'm like, is that your man or your husband? Because that standoffish, like you way over here type hug. I was like, dang, that's jacked up. Hope hope she sees him when he come back. Cause I'm like, if that's the hug you gotta remember, I don't know. So as God's humorous self would have it, I'm looking for my seat on the plane. Guess who I gotta sit next to? The lady who gave her, I'm thinking is her husband, the standoffish hug. So we get to talking, and turns out, I won't say her name, but turns out she's actually a pastor. And I was like, oh, okay. So we doing the girlfriend talk. She's a pastor. She's not married. And she was like, I was like, so we started, you know, our women always end up talking about relationships some kind of way. And I was like, well, do you want to be married? She was like, yes, girl. I was like, well, why? You dating anybody? She was like, no, I'm always at church. And I was like, okay. And she was like, I'm always praying for people, but ain't nobody praying for me. I was like, okay, so you really super busy at the church. You always praying for people. I was like, well, when a man shows interest in you, like, how do you react? She's like, oh, I act like I don't care because he got to come find me. And I was like, ooh, that's where you're going wrong right there, boo. And so there's an arrogance, and there's an entitlement, and there is a fear of vulnerability. That's what I really think it is. Where I don't want him to act like I don't want him to know I care, or I'm not gonna act like I'm feeling him. And men are very literal.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, y'all can tell me this, but what I guess the long and short, and you can chime in on this, Jamil, the long and short of it is I feel like, especially in the Black church, I don't know what they do in Catholic church and Presbyterian. I don't know if they even talk any of this. Yeah. But what I do know is that I feel like we are going out ill-equipped, and to tell women to wait until you're found, they don't tell you how men operate.
Right.
We don't know anything about the nature of a man, how y'all think, how y'all observe, none of that. And so we end up doing things that come off as standoffish because in our head, we're trying to be found.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that what I know is this too. We are now at a point where we all have a lot of work to do. Because I want to look at the statistics to go back to what you're saying. Right now, more than 70% of Black children are being raised by single mother-led households. It's pushing towards 80%, okay? We're now 2 generations into that. The spirit and the mindset and the emotional energy, the experience of both young ladies and sons has been dominated by mothers. So if you as a daughter grew up seeing your mother handle everything and be tough and provide and take care of, how in the world are you going to know as a young lady how to give any space to a woman? If I, as a young male, I grew up in a single mother household. Now my dad was around, but my dominant experience was my mother paying the bills, coming home, taking care of me and my brother. And I'm saying because of my experience, I had to unlearn a lot of that. You see? So what I'm saying is, what I believe in terms of the church, and this is not all churches, because there are ministers and ministries and churches talking and equipping people for this, but I believe predominantly it hasn't kept up with the changes that have occurred in society. And so we now look back and we look down on our great-grandparents and grandparents who stayed married for 50 years and had a house and acquired land and pushed out. We look down on them. We say to that grandmother, well, she could have been more. She wasn't successful. She could have had a PhD. She should have been more outspoken and all this and all of these kind of things. We look down on them because of how we're being conditioned now. So like you're saying, now some of the things that are being taught to women is this, like, because there's so much coddling going on for our culture, what happens is when anyone tells the truth, it feels like you're getting attacked. Think about this. A lot of women in relationships. Now, you ask men, what's the problem with the woman? The man's going to say, it's how she talked to me. That don't matter to a woman. A lot of times there are a lot of women, Black women, that doesn't register them. Why? Because they saw their mother talking however she needed to talk at work and to survive and to handle ninjas she was dealing with. They saw her talking however she wanted to talk. So now when a man or men are saying tone, how respect and tone is important, if you're not humble enough, humility is a spiritual superpower. Take your time and say, maybe I need to look at this different because maybe some of the ways I'm dealing with things aren't right. That's a superpower. As a male, guess what? When I was growing up, I asked my mom, what makes a good Black man? She said, are you gay? Are you in jail? Or something like that. If you're not gay, you're not in jail, you're good enough for any woman, and if you go to work or something like that. That's like the bare minimum not to be in jail. You know what I'm saying?
Like, just give you a human earthling.
It's a functional human, but my point is, like, I didn't know that, you know, it's value in a man having leadership skills, it's value in a man taking responsibility, learning how to be a provider, a protector. There's value in understanding some needs that women have from a man in order for her to feel affirmed. I had to learn those things because I did not always see it reflected in my house. So I had to humble myself. When I got married, my wife said, hey, that way you rolling don't work with me. I'm like, well, my mom told me I was already lit. I ain't beating you up. I ain't cheating on you. I was like, you ought to be happy.
Right.
You ought to be happy. And I had to humble myself. I had to humble myself and say, you know what? Maybe some things about as a man, how I've been conditioned, I need to learn. Maybe I have to learn to take some responsibility. Maybe I have to learn how to be more responsible in certain areas and to stand a certain way. And guess what? The same thing for my wife, because she had to learn some things that, you know what, sometimes one of the things we don't think about is the need to humble ourselves and look at our outcomes. If our outcomes are always ending up in us getting deadlocked or ending up in undesirable relationships, we have to look at that. Let me tell you one thing we're looking at now amongst our people. Right now, you're about to have more older Black women unmarried than ever in history. And we're going to have to figure out what are we going to do with that? Because marriage is so undervalued. Only 24% of Black women are going to get married. There's a ball that's been dropped by the church. There's a ball that's been dropped by us as men. There's a ball that's been dropped as us as women. And we have to start looking in the mirror, and instead of coddling ourselves, looking at where we may be sick, where we may not be healthy, and take some responsibility.
Now, Jamil, do you think, because what you just said brought something to my brain, do you think, so I was having this discussion about the disproportionate amount of women in church versus men. Yeah. And I was saying earlier, my husband and I have like these deep conversations about stuff. Yeah. And he was like, because he's not super church, he got like this totally different like take on things. And so it's really interesting to hear outside of the bubble that I grew up in. Yeah. And so he was like, you know, I was like, well, why aren't there more Black men in church? Why aren't there more men in church, period? Like, they might pop in and they might not show up for a couple of weeks, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, well, he's like, it's too emotional.
100%.
What? I was like, it's too emotional. He was like, don't a man want to hear all that? And I was like, whoa, wow, I had never heard that before. But when I started like just kind of observing how men operate, like solid masculine men they're not with all the emotions and the screaming and hollering and like all that kind of stuff. That more appeals to feminine nature. What you think about the reason why? Because the pastors on the pulpit talking about like, yo, you need a man. You can't get a man if he's not in God. And if he ain't in this church, if he ain't at church, and if he definitely ain't in this church, you really don't need to be with him because he needs to be under my supervision, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so when there is a newcomer,
Yeah.
women pounce because there ain't that many to choose from.
Oh,
So, you know, what do you think about, you know, because I was taught you better get a man from your church.
Yeah.
He better be in the church at least, but he really needs to be in your church. And so there's this it's almost like a jail cell, if you will, and a perimeter through which you can choose from. And if it's outside of that, you're gonna mess it up in your brain as a woman. You're like, well, dang, you know, in the church, like, how's this gonna work out? Because in your brain, that's super important. Or I talked to a friend of mine, she was like, I grew up Christian, but there was this Muslim man that I met that he was the hands down the best relationship I ever had. But I was afraid that we couldn't coexist because we had two different belief systems. She was like, but Ava, if I had to do it again, that was my husband. And I was like, wow, like, what do you think about the limitations that are being taught, the unrealistic expectations of men, and the illusions that we've been given in the perimeters that no other race has been given now? The other women of the other cultures, if they got to be at the baseball game to get them a man, they're gonna be there. If they got to be at the bar to get them a man to walk past them and catch his eye, they're going to be positioned. They act more like Ruth, where they position themselves to be found. Whereas Black women, we're taught a man that findeth a wife finds a good thing. Let him come get you. But that's not even like how humans operate. It's opposite of logic. Why are Black women being taught illogical ways of being found, being in dating relationships? Why are we being fed BS? Why?
It's ancient, okay? But let's just go back. I hate to do this cliche, but it's Willie Lynch, right? In order to control a people's destiny, you must remove their men. Because if you remove their men, then whatever seed you give them, those women will amplify it. Black women took the seed of a white male's idea over this country and turned it into this nation. Everybody who's watching this, you get a chance, go to YouTube and go find a video called How to Sell to a Negro. You can find a 2 or 3 minute thing of it. But if you can remove the male, there are industries that are supported by the woman not being connected with a man, right? So you got daycare. The criminal system is the biggest one. That's why after slavery ended, they needed something to perpetuate the criminalization of Blackness. And with the male out of the picture, or limited being in the picture, it makes the women more vulnerable, and then you reproduce immature males. I'm gonna touch on something else y'all talked about, the emotionalism. Then we're gonna get back to it. That is correct, okay? The emotionalism in the church is why males are not there. With men, you need to make it make sense. Okay, when you speak truth, males will show up. When you speak truth about how the nation works and how truth works, the churches were filled with Black men when they understood that their purpose was to build strong families and, as a result, a nation. And when they understood that there were unrighteous factors in the atmosphere that as men and women we had to stand up against, that was the threat. They assessed that the reason the civil rights movement was powerful was because Black families financed it. So they knew they had to stop that. So in came the spirit of anti-marriage and church emotionalism rather than truth that makes it make sense. So you can't pass no bunch of offering trays around to me off of emotion. Your singing can be all you want. I'm gonna give my dollar, I'm gonna give my giving, but you keep sending 3 or 4 of them trays because the music is good, or you done tried to boost me up. I'm like, you ain't, my wallet is staying right in my pocket.
Right.
Okay. This is how men roll. Because we like, make the thing make sense. I'm gonna give and I'm gonna support, because that's what we did. And that's how we financed a movement that had ripple effects into Africa and Asia. Colonizers in Africa left because of our movement. It changed things in Asia. That's the power of the sound frequency in us. When we get moving and unified, our sound frequency ripples into the Native American liberation movement, the Hispanic liberation movement, and even feminism and the LGBTQ is now riding on that wave to our at our expense right now sometimes, you know? Okay. But so I wanted to say that that's where the emotionalism comes from, is the truth is not being spoken. You have men that ain't afraid to speak the truth. Other men gonna get around and they're gonna build things and protect things. But if it becomes emotional, it's about a money racket.
Yeah, because some of the law classes I used to go to that incorporated like teachings of Malcolm X or those three black women, all men. I'm like, oh, this why y'all at the
make it make sense.
Y'all at these classes. Y'all ain't at the screaming and hollering and running around the church classes.
Okay, and see, look at this. Your older black men, they lived off of, they weren't as deep and educated in seminaries, but they understood principles that they shared in their family. They set standards, and then their women, their wives, cultivated culture of those standards. So you've got things now that are being imbalancedly placed on women to keep them in a cycle until they're in their mid-40s. And then they say, I should have did something different. That's how this game is designed to go. Now, it's preferable you have someone of the same faith system. But I tell people, when I counsel people, not everyone that they're getting married is of the same faith or on the same level. But universally, you know what you need? Love and respect. It's the treatment. You can have a guy who has everything in the world, but if he don't have the right character, it's not going to benefit that woman. Or that woman can be as beautiful and as successful, but if she doesn't have that right matching character to take what he has and amplify it in a positive way, it's not good. You know, so the thing is, we have to start honoring that. One of the things we got to start retraining the little girls on is, hey, that man who got that cheese sandwich in his lunchbox, and he ain't always eating at the finest Mediterranean, but he got that cheese sandwich and he's stacking his bread, and he's a man of his word. You deal with that man. You deal with the guy who got that steady work, that ethic, and he's respectful and he honors you. That when he goes into the restaurant, he sits facing the door because he's analyzing who's coming in. That's what I imprint that stuff on my daughter. You look for the guy who's like your dad, who's always looking to protect and provide for you. He may have different nuances of beliefs, but if you find that guy, commit to him and make it work. And I tell my children too, we marry off of a happiness. Old people didn't marry off of happiness. They married to build families. We work up emotions like, does she always make me happy? You be man, ain't no woman gonna always make you happy. This the opposite. Different. Always make you happy. It's about making a commitment to build something. And we're not on that anymore because of the spirit of Burger King. The spirit of Burger King has messed us up. Have it your way. And the moment we get somebody put the pickle on there on the left side or the right side, we're like, I'm done with this lady. I'm done with this guy. And we're going to regret that because we need each other. We got to start for one another again to make things to come and to build together. Because when two gather in agreement, right? You can make it. I remember when I started having children, And I was like, I don't know how we gonna do daycare and all that. But you know what? When you got commitment, the heavens, there are dimensions that open up to you because you got the commitment. If you're in agreement and that woman trusts you and she's willing to work with you through it, ideas start coming, income starts working, you start creating side hustles. You feel what I'm saying? To supplement. But that has not been glorified. We've got to rebrand working together. We got to rebrand the value of struggling together to build something.
Well, you know, and that's what actually led me to you. When we first started working together, Jamil, for those of you guys who don't know, most don't know, Jamil was my soulmate coach. You do soulmate coach, love coach, right? Where he helps people. How would you describe what you do, Jamil?
I just help people. I help people improve their capacity to be in healthy relationships. I help people find people of value and help find how they can add to that value. And I help them through that process.
Okay. So
love
yes, definitely. So the reason why I even came to you is because I kept noticing, one, I kept attracting the same man in a different body. And I'm like, something is wrong. And two, I could just tell from your walk, from your profile, from the way you carried yourself, that you and your wife were actually in a healthy Black relationship. And I had not seen a healthy Black relationship. And it was so foreign to me. I was like, man, if I could just get an example of what it looks like, then maybe I can recreate it in my life. And so that's what led me to, you guys' family. And so I think you're right about us needing a rebranding. Like, it's so sad. I be on the shade room because that's my ratchet side. That's my ratchet side. But I be on the shade room looking at the comments, Hollywood Unlocked. And the recurring thing that I keep seeing whenever people are in a relationship, they're like, oh, they ain't gonna last long. Oh, he gonna cheat on her that much. He got like 50 other girls. But like, can I get some of him too? And I personally, and I teach this in my in my music classes that I teach about psychological effects of music, how, back in the 1950s, you had songs like, I've got sunshine on a cloudy day. When it's cold outside, I've got the month of May. I guess you say, what can make me feel this way? My girl, my girl, my girl. And it was just my imagination. He said, soon we'll be married and raise a family. He was like all up in his imagination. Now you got songs like Two of My in the Club, and I know they know about each other. I think he's trying to set me up. And then another song, I think it was Lil Yachty. I always get them mixed up, but he's like, I just want you for one night, but you can't be my wife. And I'm like, wait a minute. On pop radio, they're singing songs like, marry that girl, marry her anyway, marry that girl, no matter what you say. And then on urban radio, you got songs like, I'm ready to sign these papers, and you be my wife. And so I'm like, wait a minute. We are being psychologically trained to do our relationships this way. Why? Because the wealth is in marriage. How is it in marriage? When you get married, and if one of the spouses passes on, that property automatically goes to the spouse.
That's it.
But when you never get married, well, one, you're gonna be paying rent forever, possibly, unless you get into a mortgage, which means debt note, which is, you might as well be paying rent. But that property doesn't get passed on. And guess who's waiting in the sidelines, waiting for you not to have any property?
That's how we've lost. That's how we've lost. But this is the thing. When we want to get a trade, we go and apprentice with someone for a season to master that trade. We want to get a degree. We go to school for 4 or more years to get that degree, right? So when we want something important, we put ourselves in a position to learn and study that thing. But with relationships, we just get in them. Relationships and marriage, we don't study for them. We don't apprentice with the elder women who've had successful. We don't apprentice with the older uncles, the ministers, or the wise people. We just get in them. And like you said, the music back in the day encouraged you to fight. There was even music, I forget the lady, who she was like, hey, I know you was with my man, but that's my man. They fought. You see what I'm saying? They were like, they fought for it, right? But now you have Beyonce saying, all my ladies, independent, but she married. She's securing her destiny for her children. You have Ice Cube, who brought in gangster rap, and Snoop Dogg, who brought in pimpism, but they're married and they're protected. We need to hold our images, the idols, which the Bible told us to stay away from worshiping idols. We need to hold these people accountable for the mixed messaging. And we need to humble ourselves to look at ourselves and say, where can I be better? How can I stop pointing the finger at him? All these men are dogs. There's no good men. All these women are terrible. How do we stop pointing the finger and turn it back at ourselves? Say, I need to rebrand my thinking. I need to uncolor purple myself.
Right.
I need to unlove and hip hop myself. I need to un-Beyonce independent. I don't want no scrubs. I need to unscrub myself and get a rebranding on the power and purpose, because the more committed relationships you have, the longer, studies show, the longer you live, the healthier you are. As you said, wealth transfer occurs through marriage. There was a study done, and I wish I could find it. I'll find it and put the link up, that it says in the Black community, poverty and crime, lack of education can be eliminated through marriage. Now, not to say anyone out there that's single, you got less value. Not all of us here to get married. Not everybody married is in a good situation. We don't need to say that, but it is to say we need to start having talks about the value of us rethinking this and understanding that our ancestors were able to defy insurmountable odds because they knew they needed each other, and they followed biblical principles and truths about the value of marriage and agreement to overcome what was in the atmosphere. They were able to have dominion over the earth in spite of the opposition. Degree that is different from what we have right now. And that's the thing. And the church and culture has gotten away from those things, and I think we need to re-examine them to combat the spirit of anti-marriage.
Right.
Forget about anti-Christ. In the Black community, we got to fight the spirit of anti-marriage.
And we need to up the marketing, because there's a meme going around with the picture of the head of BET. He looks nothing like me and you. And so there's these images being put into our brains about how we aren't capable of doing relationships, or you know, songs like, you know, Keisha Cole used to be like, I should have cheated on you. Like, that's what we hear all the time. Like, and so, like, I feel like healthy marriages like yours, and healthy marriages like mine, and anybody who's, if you're out there, if we was out in the middle of the sea, like, please wave a flag and let us know you're here. We really need to remarket and make it, I guess, sexy to be in a healthy Black loving relationship. Like, that needs to be marketed in a way that's lets people know that it is possible, because a lot of people have given up that recurring cycle of, well, my mama, she dealt with a man who wasn't ish, and so now I only attract men that ain't ish because that's all I'm used to having, and then I don't know how to treat one when I get a good one, and then I treat him like he ain't ish, and then he's damaged, and now the next girl he deal with, he gonna dog her out. He might have a good girl, but he gonna cheat on her because he figured she's like that. And it's this cycle. It's a cycle. And so I am very extremely passionate about us getting our families back together, because I believe that there has been a concerted effort to dismantle our relationships. And unfortunately,
Absolutely.
even the pastors, not all of them, but
Right.
a good amount of them are complicit. Some of them getting paid under the table from politicians and from other people, so to speak, that are paying them to teach misinformation, or paying them, and it could be one little word that throw you off.
That's
Or it could
it.
be the lack of information telling you exactly how to walk it out. So I think that's really, really important.
That's absolutely important, and it's important that couples work together. We do need to restore community, and it's important that we tell the truth.
Mhm.
We got to tell the truth that when we're learning to relate to each other, none of us are perfect. I want to say this, and I got to get out of here.
Okay.
Black men and women, if you are getting ready to marry a black woman or a black man, learn about yourself.
Mm.
Get counseling. Surround yourself with people who have been in it. Value the examples you have. Do not make an excuse about I didn't see one, because what the Creator showed me, the Holy Spirit showed me, is that I had the examples. My father and my mother had their own individual gifts. I had uncles and aunts that stayed married. And what I learned from those examples is that we got to understand you're dealing with imperfect people. You're going to go through some things you never expected, but humble yourself to learn and to stick through and fight it, and to gather around yourself other people who've been through it, so that when you go through things with the imperfect human, you don't see it as the end of the world. I tell you, you got to be married 10 years before you actually get into a good flow. They don't tell y'all that. You got to be in it 10 years. For some arguments ain't even gonna die out unless you've been in it 10 years of ups and downs and battles and blessings. So I want to say that too. Let's be honest about it. I don't never fake no funk like my marriage is perfect. We've had ups and downs, but we've been in it for 15 years now. So we've learned a rhythm. And we've learned some things ain't gonna ever be perfect. My wife will tell you my imperfections. Some of them ain't gonna never change. But it's the commitment that allows it to even out. Okay. And there's value in it because it impacts your children. Your children grow up feeling more stable. Their personalities develop because they're not having to worry about other impacts as much as they would. So yeah, this is just part one, Ava. We got to do more of these because there's so much to talk about. But I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it.
Me too. I'm like, that hour flew by. So I definitely feel like we just scraped the surface. We didn't even like get to the meat all the way. So let's definitely plan to do this again. And I appreciate you. How can people find you if someone wants your love coach services or want to?
Now I'm gonna tell y'all straight up, I ain't got no web page. Just find me on Facebook, Chris Jamil Manistries. Okay. Chris Jamil Manistry. My ministry is being a man who's trusting the Creator and sharing what I learned. My ministry is being a man in my household. My thing ain't having no pulpit for 1,000 people. But if you feel like you could gain something from learning about relationships or get some understanding about how to break your patterns, you can find me on Facebook as Chris Jamil Manistries. And I want to tell everyone, family, be gentle with yourself and one another. We don't know what other people have gone through. We know what we've been through, but we don't know what other people have gone through of any race, but in particularly our brothers and sisters in the African American community. So be gentle with one another and be wise and discerning, and always be willing to learn how to improve how you handle yourself and other people. So yeah, but that's
saying I'm not settling, because we all been through trauma, we all been through hell, and like to look at your brother like, or another person, another man that you're interested in as well, I don't want to settle for him. Like it's kind of like you think you're better, you're way better than him, but we all been in the trenches, like and literally having to come from the bottom and pull ourselves out of this mess that has been created for us. So when you think of dating in that manner, and you think of when you're meeting somebody, you're meeting another person that's been through all kind of different things, you can have more compassion than he ain't got this and he ain't got this, he don't have enough money, he ain't calling enough, blah blah blah. Like we gotta let that go. We ain't got time for that no more. Like your money might not even matter next year. Like
That's right.
you know, the dollar inflation now. What you gonna measure with then? If dollars don't matter no more, inflation that ate up bread is $12.
Right. That's it.
By now. So
that's it.
but I can keep talking, and I don't want to keep you because you know I got so much to say. But we'll definitely do this another time, and I appreciate you coming on. And this was lit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, hey, we'll do it another time. I look forward to it. And everybody, hey, peace to y'all.
All right. See y'all.
All right.
All right.